Welcome to Camaraderie, FDR's favorite photography-based YouTube channel. This episode is sponsored by just how many different kinds of gravy there are. You got sawmill gravy, turkey gravy, mushroom gravy, sausage gravy, which is kind of like sawmill gravy, but a little bit different. Then you also have like the stuff in the northeast of the United States that they call gravy, but it's actually more of like marinara. You got the Chicago-based Italian beef gravy, which is kind of like a au jus sort of sauce, and then you've got chocolate gravy, red ice. Today's video is about everyone's favorite topic to bring up at family gatherings: politics. Well, the relationship between politics and art generally, and specifically photography, since that's like, my thing. Let me set the scene for why I'm making this video. I've gotten some comments here and there over the last year and a half or so, since I started this channel back. A couple of comments that say, they don't say this exactly, but they amount to: leave your politics out of this and stick to photography. Normally, I try not to pay any attention to those sorts of comments, but they popped up in my last couple of like big trip videos, the one out west, the one recently that I did in Chicago, and I didn't even say anything that I thought was overtly political. I basically just implied that Donald Trump was either gross or laughable, which I thought was a pretty universal sentiment. I've seen, obviously, people on the left not big fans of Trump, but I've seen people on the right, on the conservative side of things in America, say the same sort of thing, like, he's a jackass, but he just tells it like it is, so I like him. So I really didn't think implying anything of the sort was going to be controversial, but here we are. Now, there's a lot that I could unpack in all of that. Just that whole thing. There's a lot that could be said about all of that, but yeah, that would piss off even more people than this video is already going to. So instead, I want to talk about how those comments and just the general vibe kind of got me thinking about the intersection of politics and art, how they mix, or whether or not they even should, that sort of thing. And so I started, just looking at the history of politics and art. Fair warning, this video is going to be a little bit more on the philosophical side of things. So if you're looking for just me talking about cool old cameras, or doing photo walks, or gear reviews, or anything like that, feel free to tap out. And I've got plenty of videos on those subjects. You can go watch those, or you can just come back in the next video and join me then. This video is not going to be me going on a rant of the potential ramifications of whatever politically charged hot button issue is the topic of the day. This is just me musing on the intersection of politics and art. First, I want to lay some groundwork just to make sure that we're all working from the same definitions and coming at this the same way, or at least how I approach it. So what does it mean to be political? I minored in classical studies and during my time in university. So, plus I just like words. Words are fun and cool. So anytime I want to figure out what something means, why it means why it means what it does, then I tend to look at the etymology of the word. And in this case, the etymology of the word political or politics comes from the Greek, because of course it does. Like, almost half of our language, more than half of our language, English language, is either Greek or Latin based. So anyways, it comes from ultimately, the root word is the Greek polis. Polis? I don't know, I'm not Greek. Polis simply means city. And that gives us the other root word, politikos, which just means it's something that refers to It's of the citizens and free people is how I understand it. Obviously, over the last couple of millennia, the word has come to mean something different. The connotations have changed. Now it more directly refers to what we consider like the practice of politics. In Western society in particular, this word can conjure up pictures of putrid politicians pushing for profligatory profits from power-broking super PACs. But at the end of the day, as unreachable and distant as they seem, politicians' decisions do affect the everyday lives of everyday folks. Politics involves people, and people are political. Let me unpack that just a little bit more. The original Greek definition is what I will be working from here on out, and I think it's the simplest definition that gets to the heart of the matter. We are all citizens, we are all people on this little pale blue dot that we call home. Nothing is done in a societal vacuum. So we are all political beings, whether we embrace that or not. What does this have to do with photography and art? Well, it bothers me. Bother is too strong of a word. It bemuses me whenever people complain about art and politics mixing. Stick to your music. Keep your politics out of this. I used to be a fan until all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you get so political. You just think because you're big and successful musician, look, another successful musician just all of a sudden thinks they know everything about politics. People actually said stuff like that to Tom Morello last year. I guess they thought the machine he was raging against was like a printer, which, I mean, to be fair, I totally get that. Printers are infuriating. I've also seen a bunch of photographers that I follow get some flack for voicing their political opinions, especially on Twitter, especially over the last few years. You know, it's the same thing. Stick to photography, just make some pretty pictures and leave your politics out of it. I just don't really get that mindset. People are political, and politics affects everyone, so of course it's going to come up from time to time, even from people, from artists who aren't generally political. Like, even if that's not their main focus for making art, it just comes out sometimes. Picasso was a prime example of this. By design and by his own admission and intention, his works were not supposed to be political. Though you could argue that Surrealist artists were inherently political, as they were inspired by the Dadaists, who started doing their thing as a direct response to what they considered the cause of World War I, which was the logic, reason, and aestheticism of modern capitalist society, but that's a topic for another time. Anyways, Picasso wasn't known as a political painter, again, by design, but then he painted Guernica as a direct protesting response to the bombings of the town Guernica in Spain by the Nazis and fascist Italy, and now it's like one of his greatest, most well-known works. This makes sense. Artists are generally emotional, creative people who react to the circumstances around them. When stuff hits the fan and they see atrocities happening around them, it only makes sense that they're going to make some sort of statement, either in like a general response or a call for action, or maybe an offhand comment that they made in a travel video, or even in their art. Some artists are more political than others, and some are intentionally non-political. They don't want to make a statement, which has always been kind of weird to me, because I feel like that in and of itself is making a statement. But again, that's a topic for another time. This is true for all artists and all forms of art, but I think the visual arts and visual artists are uniquely placed in all of this. Art has been intertwined with politics since pretty much the beginning of both in ancient Greece. Sometimes art is funded by the government, sometimes it's a response to the actions of the leading powers of the day. This trend continued through the rise of Christianity in the Roman Empire, through the Renaissance and Shakespeare's plays, through the founding of the USA through to today. My point is, art and politics have been embedded together for coming up on 3,000 years now. Since first stepping out of a chemist's lab and out into the world, photography has been inextricably linked with politics. Some of the oldest surviving pictures are of heads of state and times of war. You have photographers like Jacob Riis, who documented the slums of late 19th century New York City in order to highlight the tenement housing crisis. Dorothea Lange and Walker Evans are known for their Depression-era work with the Farm Security Administration. Robert Capa was at Omaha Beach on D-Day. Susan Meiselas did work in war-torn Nicaragua. Gordon Parks did a ton for the civil rights movement. Jamel Shabazz has spent decades documenting the street life of Brooklyn and Pride Festival in New York City. Just a for instance off the top of my head. Okay, Luke, well that's all well and good, but those are mostly documentary and street photographers, and those kind of tend to just be more political in nature. What about fashion portraiture and, landscape photography? Oh my god, you know, I think this video's over because you got me there. There's nothing ever political that's ever happened or been done in either of those genres. Definitely not from Richard Avedon, who's, only one of the most influential American fashion photographers. It's not like he quit Harper's Bazaar after coming under scrutiny for including models of color in his photo shoots, or, collaborating with James Baldwin to create nothing personal. And there's certainly nothing political about Ansel Adams' works either. His landscapes were simple representations of pure natural beauty, with no underlying motive or political aims or statement included. Nah, he wasn't on the board of directors at the Sierra Club, and he absolutely did not use his photography as a means to lobby for the creation of various national parks and to protect vulnerable environments from dangerous development projects. No. Well, what about the pictures I took with my friends on a night out? There's nothing political about that, right? Well, yes and no. On one hand, you're right. It's not political in the sense that you're making some grand statement about what's going on right now in Tigray or Xinjiang or Kabul by capturing a moment of frivolity on a night out with your friends just for posterity and future nostalgia. On the other hand, it is political in the sense that every photograph is from a perspective, and impartiality is an illusion. You are saying something. In this sense, and this is how I view it, all photography is political because all photography takes place in a social and cultural context and can be viewed as a form of suggestive manipulation. The politics of a photograph start from the moment you begin framing the shot. What or who do you include? What or who do you exclude? What or who do you focus on? My point is, you choose the frame to convey a message. When you ask someone what their politics are, you are not asking if they're Republican or Democrat or Tory or Labor Party or, fill in the blank. What you're really asking them is what their point of view on the world is. So to me, it follows that every photograph is political because it contains a point of view. You just can't wash politics out of photography. I could go on about this for a while. It's a topic I didn't realize I had so much to think on. At least half of the research that I did for this video didn't even make it in, just because it would be super long, and I've made a couple really long videos recently, but there are issues that I would love to investigate further. For instance, I thought about exploring the current aesthetic regime and how it came from the poetic regime before it and how that overthrew the ethical regime that was pontificated upon by Plato, and how all of that led to the further integration of politics and art, or how the interpretive openness of art gives us reason to assume that the search for a work of art that is universally considered political or non-political is kind of pointless. That last thought actually gives me a nice segue into the end of this video. No visual imagery is ever going to be seen exactly the same way by any two given people. It just isn't. I see a Trump Tower as a sign of brazen excess made possible by society's centuries-long embrace of unfettered capitalism. I can't help that it elicits a visceral reaction in me. You might see it differently, and that's totally fine. Anyways, let me know in the comments what you think about all of this. Do I have this completely wrong? Is politics only what we think of as politics, or is there something deeper to it? Like I said, that's how I approach it. But please, if you do engage in conversation in the comments, please keep it nice and civil. At the very least, be civil, be kind. These sorts of conversations can get messy and dumb and mean real quick, and I don't have any desire to see that. Other than that, I hope this video has just given you something to think about. That's all I ever want to do with my photography or my work on this channel, is just cause people to think for a second. Just get people to think. I don't think there's enough thinking. Think. There's not enough thinking in society. But yeah, no, I'll be on this side of the lens in the next video. So until then, see ya.